6:28 a.m. on October 7. 19-year-old surveillance soldier Ronnie Eshel at the Nahal Oz border outpost sees the beginning of the Hamas attack. Ronnie broadcasts the code word for an assault on Israel. The fence is breached by explosives in at least 29 places. Hamas fighters surge across, filming as they go. In cars and utes, motorbikes and on foot. Some break off for the border outposts, including Nahal Oz, where Ronnie Eshel is stationed, along with 24 other unarmed female surveillance soldiers. Others make for the border communities, including Kibbutz Be'eri, just 4 kilometres from Gaza and home to around 1,200 people. Inside Be'eri, a resident films the Hamas convoy driving towards the kibbutz. From the front gate and at least 2 other points, Hamas is inside Be'eri. The murders have begun. The kibbutz has its own volunteer security squad. At 71, Rami Gold had been told he was too old for it, and his access to a rifle was taken away. But at 6:45 a.m, with the kibbutz's speakers blaring Seva Adom, red alert, Rami calls a friend on the squad, Hagi.
He said, we have our first casualty. Can you come over and help?
Like almost everybody else in Be'eri, Gold has no idea that more than 20 attackers are already inside the sprawling kibbutz, hunting its residents. He cycles to Be'eri's dental clinic in the centre of the kibbutz. It's become a makeshift triage centre for wounded residents.
I could see one of the members standing out with a rifle, pointing westward, and I asked him, what's happening? He said, well, Hagi is wounded west from here, inside the kibbutz. Can you come over and bring him to the clinic? I said, sure, give me a rifle, which I took from the dead guy who was lying inside.
Another Be'eri resident, Nili Bar Sinai, receives an alarming phone call from her daughter, who lives in a different part of the kibbutz.
She said there are terrorists around and we should go inside the safe room. And well, I thought maybe 2 or 3, so it will take time to catch them, but you know. But I heard that she was anxious, so I said, do you want your father to come? She said, no, it's dangerous. But nevertheless, he went.
Today, Nili takes us to the house her daughter lived in.
He went up the stairs, they made coffee, and he told her that he was going out, and he was standing here. And then when they came up, he shot them and they shot him.
Her daughter, inside the home, doesn't see her father killed.
She heard the noises, she understood that she thought he was dead. But still the door was open because she was expecting maybe he would come back. And then she heard steps and somebody opened the door and she saw this thing of the Nukhba people, and she slammed the door.
Let's go to my home where I used to live until the 7th of October.
Eilet Hakim's home is nearby. Like all Be'eri houses, it has a thick-walled bomb shelter known as a safe room, although it has no lock.
Well, this is the safe room. It felt a lot smaller then because there were like closets here and 4 of us.
Eilet and her family have been in and out of their shelter since dawn, when the alerts began.
And then we start seeing these WhatsApp messages from all around the kibbutz. There was a lot of messages there saying that there are terrorists on the kibbutz. They started to say, okay, so what are we going to do now? What's going to happen now? What are we going to do? And people said, oh, wait, the army will come probably 20 minutes, 10 minutes, stay in your safe room and wait until the army comes.
But there is no sign of help.
On that Saturday, it was quiet. There was no sound at all. No drones, no aeroplanes, no helicopters. It was so quiet. All I wanted to hear was that noise of the helicopter or the drone or something to tell me that someone is watching after me.
Soon, the silence is punctured by the sound of gunfire coming closer and closer. Eilet and her family message each other via WhatsApp. It gets worse. The WhatsApp groups share images of residents being marched through the torn Be'eri fence towards Gaza, including Eilet's brother-in-law, Ohad, and her sister, Raz. They live on a nearby street.
Started hearing all the stories about terrorists all around the kibbutz, and the houses being burned and being broken into and being shot, and I didn't think anybody can survive that.
Then her front door crashes open.
And we realized there are terrorists in our house.
That they're inside your house.
Inside our house.
Rattling the door
Yes.
of the safe room.
Yeah, trying to open the door of the safe room. So we understood there are terrorists in our house as well. I sent a message to my family that there are terrorists in my house and that I love them all.
All along the Gaza border, others exploit the Hamas breaches.
Some of the atrocities were committed by the people who came, by the civilians who came, right? Is that your understanding?
And these people, they were wild. They were wild. You know, they were shooting around just for fun. They would come to a house and take whatever they could, and then they would just shoot around just for the joy of it.
Near Tel Aviv, retired General Israel Ziv isn't one to sit and watch the chaos unfold on television. At 9:30 a.m, he dresses in his uniform, straps on his pistol, and roars in his white Audi down the quiet Saturday morning highways.
I start to travel by myself and start to, to see things and to understand that it's huge. It's something much bigger than I've ever thought that we might face.
He hits Highway 232, which runs through the border communities. Hamas got here first.
I was starting to navigate, to find myself between the cars, the burning cars and the bodies. I was just calling the division commander, and he answered the phone and told me that he himself is fighting for his life in the command post.
Ziv runs into two Hamas squads. Border police take care of the first one. The second wasn't so simple.
Our car was hit with many bullets, and we took cover. And there were two other squads of special units next to us. So I was right in the middle, trying to control that battle,
The ambush cleared, Ziv begins rescuing civilians hiding near the road.
And I was going around Be'eri. There are some forests over there, and I succeeded to find and rescue a few youngsters.
They're escapees from the Nova Music Festival. He heads there.
What I've seen there was, terrifying, and so many bodies. I started to go from, body to body, try to touch. Maybe I can find somebody that is still alive. And it was like taking from a, horror movie or something like that.
This private citizen is one of the first on the scene.
I couldn't find anybody alive. And then I decided to go back to Be'eri.
As Be'eri burns, it's filmed from a police helicopter. This footage was obtained by Israeli investigative program Uvda. By now, packs of terrorists are moving freely through the kibbutz, murdering and kidnapping at will. Rami Gold finds his wounded friend Hagi.
And he said, I can't breathe, I'm dying. I said, look, Hagi, if you can shout, you can breathe. He managed to call his wife, tell her he loves her and he's dying. And she didn't believe him either. When I reached him, he got choked from the bullet in the chest and he died.
Rami links up with another kibbutz resident, General Yossi Bachar. They take cover on the veranda of a nearby home where they're concealed from the attackers. They make a formidable team.
So every time they went back and forth, including the lawn here, we were able to shoot at them. And the point was the system. Every time we shot one of them down, we went over and we hid inside the storage room here. And the bullets were flying everywhere, hand grenades. And when it stopped, we went out back to our posts.
Right.
And we kept on going.
The IDF's report into the assault on Be'eri says that by 11 a.m. there were 340 attackers in the kibbutz. Until around 1:30 p.m, so for the first 7 hours, the combat here was primarily fought by the residents of Be'eri, like Rami Gold and the general. After fighting for hours, the pair is exhausted, out of ammunition and injured by grenade shrapnel.
And I came back here and I said, look, I'm going to stand here because I can't kneel, but here's the last bullet. You shoot better than I do.
Inside the stifling safe room, Eilet Hakim's family has no water or food. Her 4-year-old daughter, June, is hungry.
I told her, listen, there are very bad people in our house, and if mom or dad will go out, we might not come back. So we can't go out right now. So we have to stay, and we have to stay really, really quiet. And my daughter is a very energetic little girl. She screams and she shouts and she talks very loudly, and those 17 hours, she was really, really quiet.
With its unlockable door, the safe room is not safe at all. The terrorists in the house try to turn the handle, but Eilet's husband holds it closed. The intruders don't realise the family is on the other side of the door.
My husband was holding the handle for 17 hours, standing next to the door, telling us to lie down on the bed so you won't be exposed to the window and the doors, because the WhatsApp messages kept saying that people are being shot through the door, being shot through the window. So we waited. All we wanted was, we waited for soldiers to come, Israeli soldiers. And we saw the messages until our phone went dead. We saw the messages that the army isn't coming, and there's no army, and there's no soldiers, and there's nobody here to save us, and there's nobody here to come and take us out. And
that must have been incomprehensible to you.
it's devastating. It's devastating.
As civilians were being murdered and kidnapped and fighting for their lives, where was the Israeli army? Isolated units were fighting back, but with attacks on communities up and down this highway, the army is utterly overwhelmed and slow to respond.
Took them an awful lot of time to understand what's actually happening, that this is the big war. 3,000 terrorists crossing the border, followed by the mob that is carrying out all kinds of attacks as well. And they didn't realize that until late in the morning, or late at noon.
General Yossi Kupovasa is the former head of research in the Army's intelligence division.
We were convinced that Hamas is deterred and unable to carry out such an operation. This was the reason they ignored the information and decided to keep to delay the decision making. It's a terrible mistake.
It's late afternoon outside Be'eri when Israel Ziv first sees a large group of soldiers, but they're not entering Be'eri in force.
So I went to the commander and said to him, what is going on? How can I help? And he said, okay, I'm organizing myself. I'm preparing myself to go into the kibbutz. After 10 minutes, you know, nothing is happening, and I went back to him and said, okay, what is going on? He said, I'm still preparing. I said, okay, but you know, people get killed over there. Hamas is there. We need to take over the kibbutz. And for the third time, I was very nervous, you know, coming back to him and say, you know, we need to move. We don't have time, and it's going to be dark like anytime soon.
When the troops finally enter, they're sent on limited rescue missions.
The whole point was misconcept of the situation, because what was supposed to be in place is taking over the kibbutz massively and not deal as a first stage with each house or each rescue.
Definitely the results they would have managed to accomplish just on a scattered intervention would be much less than compared with something that's organized, coordinated and ruled by somebody who's in charge.
Around 50 locations were attacked on October 7, but 1 year on, Israel has released very little information about the assaults or the military response. Just a brief summary of what happened in one community, Be'eri. Some of its findings are damning. The IDF did not fulfil its mission to defend the residents. In some cases, security forces fought to defend a position and evacuate and treat wounded soldiers before doing so for civilians. From the afternoon hours onwards, forces were waiting outside the kibbutz while the massacres continued inside. Ailet Hakim and her family survive. They've moved to another town in the Negev desert where they await news on Ailet's brother-in-law, who remains a hostage in Gaza. The now 5-year-old June has recovered her voice, but does not ever want to be alone. 101 civilians were murdered in Be'eri that day. 30 more were taken hostage. 35 soldiers and police were killed there too, including the soldier who rescued Ailet's family, shot dead a few hours later. But really, this family saved itself.
Yeah. So I think your dad is a Superman, holding that door handle for 17 hours.
I don't think he's Superman. I think he's our hero. Without him, I don't know where I will be now.
If you had a chance to speak to one of the commanders who was responsible that day, one of the army commanders, the Israeli army commanders, what would you say to them?
Where were you? Still, where were you?
Ronnie Eshel, the 19-year-old observation soldier who radioed the first warnings about the Hamas attack, was killed inside the Nahal Oz base, along with 54 others. 7 of the base's female soldiers were taken hostage. 1 has been killed, 1 has been rescued, and 5 remain in Gaza. Ronnie's grave is here in a Tel Aviv cemetery.
She was smile for everyone. She was so good. She was a good person. She was a good she had a good life.
Her father, Ayel Eshel, is the driving force behind a private inquiry into the IDF's failings on October 7, including reports multiple intelligence sources, like Ronnie Eshel, were ignored.
They saw the preparations for
they saw
October
everything.
7.
They saw everything, especially the terrorist people that started to make everything. Nobody listened to her. Nobody listened to the other girls of soldiers over there.
Ronnie and other female soldiers in the base held out in the control room until midday, 5.5 hours after she reported the border was being breached. There was no rescue mission.
Where was the IDF soldiers? Where was the whole person inside the IDF? Where was the whole command people? The command people. You're the people that's supposed to know in the beginning of something happened.
3 days before October 7, Ronnie Eshel was home on leave. She told her father she was worried about a Hamas attack.
And she told me that they know everything. And I put my hand all on her shoulder and I told her, Ronnie, what do you want? We have a good army. We have a strong army. Don't worry, everything will be okay.